Did you hear about Jack the Ripper? Hi, I'm your host, Miss T, and today we're delving into the eerie world of Jack the Ripper, probably the most infamous serial killer in the world. Jack the Ripper took the lives of 5 victims. But why? What was the motive? Who was Jack, and why was he never found? Let's travel back in time to uncover the truth of the most notorious serial killer. In 1888, bodies of prostitutes began piling up in the streets of London. An unnamed serial killer was on the loose. An anonymous letter was posted to the press, claiming to be the killer. The letter was signed, Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper first began claiming the lives of his victims in 1888. He was mainly active in Whitechapel in London, England. His killing spree lasted about 4 years, from 1888 to 1892. In this time, it is thought that Jack the Ripper claimed the lives of 5 women, now named as the Canonical 5. However, some people think that Jack the Ripper claimed the lives of up to 11 women. All 5 of the Canonical 5 were prostitutes. During this period, it was not uncommon for women to turn to prostitution as a way of making money. On the 31st of August, 1888, the first victim of Jack the Ripper was a prostitute named Mary Nichols. At 3:30 a.m, a man named Charles Cross left his home in Doverton Street. As he walked down Bucks Row, he noticed a dark bundle lying in the road. At first he thought it was just rubbish piled in the street, but as he grew nearer, he realised it was a woman. It would be the body of Mary Nichols. She was found on her back, her throat slashed and disemboweled. Police were called to the scene, and they determined that she had only been dead for half an hour, meaning the killer was most likely nearby. On September 8th, Jack's second victim would be claimed, a woman named Annie Chapman. Annie's body was discovered on 29 Hanbury Street by an elderly resident named John Davis. John found Annie's body lying on the ground between some steps and a fence, a handkerchief tied around her throat. Her throat was slashed, her face and hands covered in blood, and her hands were raised, giving the impression she had attempted to stop the bleeding in her throat. But what is most disturbing is the fact that the killer completely cut out Annie's womb. A doctor was called on site, and at 6:30 a.m, Dr. Baxter Phillips arrived at the scene. In his testimony, he recited what he saw. The body was terribly mutilated. He noticed that the throat was dissevered deeply, that the incisions through the skin were jagged and reached right around the neck. Seeing how Annie Chapman's womb was removed, Dr. Phillips proposed the idea that the killer had anatomical knowledge. This was to be the very first clue in the Ripper case. On September 27th, the Central News Agency received a letter claiming to be from the killer. At first, the news agency wasn't concerned about the letter, but eventually handed it over to the Metropolitan Police. The letter was addressed to the boss, Central News Office. It read,
"Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck, yours truly, Jack the Ripper."
September 30th, 1888. On September 30th at 1 a.m, the body of Elizabeth Stride was found by Lewis Deemschutz. Lewis was walking down Barnett Street when he spotted a dark form on the ground. He struck a match to see better and saw that the dark form was in fact a woman sitting in a pool of blood. Elizabeth's throat had been cut, but the rest of the body had not been mutilated. This led police to believe that Lewis may have interrupted the killer. Only 45 minutes after the discovery of Elizabeth, yet another body was found in Mitre Square, just 10 minutes from Barnett Street. This was to be the 4th victim of Jack the Ripper, Catherine Eddowes. Her face had been severely mutilated, her throat cut and her face disemboweled. In addition, there were deep V-shapes carved into her cheeks and eyelids. And if that wasn't creepy enough, her uterus and left kidney were removed. That same night, Jack the Ripper left police their very first clue, a piece of Catherine Eddowes' apron found near the scene of the crime. The evidence was found on Golston Street, a street just east of Catherine's body. Next to the apron, a message was written in white chalk. It read, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." On November 9th, 1888, nearly a month later, the body of the 5th canonical victim was found. Mary Kelly was found in 13 Miller's Court, in her bed. At around 4 a.m. the morning of November 9th, 2 of Mary's neighbours heard someone cry, "Murder!" But such cries were frequent in the area, and they ignored it. At 10:45 a.m, the landlord sent his assistant, Thomas Bower, to Mary's room to collect the rent. But when he knocked on the door, there was no answer. When he entered the room, he described what he saw as, quote, "On the bed was all that remained of the young woman. There was little left of her, not much more than a skeleton. Her face was terribly scarred and mutilated. All this was horrifying enough, but the mental picture of that sight, which remains most vividly with me, is the poor woman's eyes. They were wide open and seemed to be staring straight at me with a look of terror. Mary Kelly's body had been mutilated beyond recognition and had been skinned alive, leaving nothing more than a skeleton. And with that, we have our 5 canonical victims. But who was this monster? Were there any eyewitnesses? To answer that question, yes. Eyewitness testimonies state that the killer could be between 23 to 35 years old, about 5'5" or 5'7", and was seen wearing a dark overcoat and hat. Many authorities believe that Jack was a doctor due to his precision on the mutilations and dissections. Since the murders, there have been countless suspects, with numbers going into the hundreds. But today I'm going to talk about 2 of the most popular and most prominent suspects. Let's get into it. Our first suspect is Joseph Barnett. Joseph actually lived with Mary Kelly, the final canonical victim. It's believed that Barnett was infatuated with Mary and was secretly madly in love with her. However, he hated her choice to be a prostitute. On October 30th, 1888, he and Mary had a violent fight, potentially due to Barnett's disapproval of whom Mary associated with as a prostitute. 10 days after this fight, Mary was found dead in her room. Theorists claim that Barnett may have killed prostitutes to scare Mary and keep her off the streets. Barnett would also have access to Mary's room, as he owned a key. Theorists claim that Barnett may have entered Mary's room and killed her in a fit of jealous rage. Coincidentally, after Mary's death, the killings stopped. Our second suspect is Aaron Kominski. Aaron was a Polish and Jewish barber who lived in Whitechapel and was known for his hatred towards women, especially prostitutes. His appearance matched the descriptions by the police of a man in Mitre Square, the night of the double murder. In 2014, the book, naming Jack the Ripper, was published. In the book, the author states that he had purchased a shawl that contains DNA evidence proving Aaron is the killer. The shawl may have belonged to Catherine Eddowes, the 4th canonical victim of Jack the Ripper. The author claims that the shawl matches one of Catherine's descendants, and when examined further, they found blood on the shawl that was linked to Aaron. However, this may not be the case. It turns out the scientists may have made a critical error and a grave mistake, leaving the DNA sample tarnished. However, the author still defends his work today. So, the true identity of Jack the Ripper still remains a mystery. Today, you can visit the murder sites of Jack the Ripper's victims, and some say you can even see the victims' spirits. People have claimed to see the ghost of Annie Chapman, the 2nd Ripper victim, haunting Hanbury Street, where she was killed. If Annie's ghost isn't there, you'll find her at the 10 Bells pub, where she allegedly had a drink the morning of her murder. People have claimed to feel cold spots, cold chills, and even seen full-body apparitions. Staff at the pub have claimed to see a Victorian woman appearing and disappearing, and even moving objects. Due to the unfortunate and oddly concerning number of murders near the pub, the 10 Bells is named the most haunted pub in London. For over 100 years, the mystery of Jack the Ripper continues to confuse, intrigue, and fascinate the public. What are your theories? Was he a barber with homicidal tendencies, or was this a fit of jealous rage? To this day, we still don't know, and maybe we'll never know. Why don't you see for yourself? This Halloween, why don't you venture to Whitechapel to see the locations of the canonical 5? Or maybe stop by the 10 Bells and try and capture paranormal activity. Happy Halloween!